He simply could not answer, do you have an argument for atheism? He couldn't answer it.
Yeah, I've done this. I've flipped it on them too. They can't take it to its final conclusion.
So you guys are
William
Christians?
Craig is a good one.
Yeah, I'm a fundamentalist Christian who debates against atheists and anybody who opposes the Christian worldview.
So, just a quick question. I've met quite a few kind Christians before, but I've noticed quite a few of them have really, really awful takes on, well, I guess race and stuff like that. A lot of racism has evolved. It's
Probably
weird.
the Orthodox. Probably the
What do you-
Orthodox.
what-
The Orthodox.
What do you, racism and like what?
Are you talking about Jews?
Are you a Christian?
No.
So then, what would be your grounds for any ethical imperative, such as that you would oppose racism?
Well,
Why? Since you're not a Christian, here's the question. I'll simplify it for you. Since you're not a Christian, why would anything be wrong?
that's an odd question, but personally,
No. That's a serious question. Why is anything wrong?
Because I guess it's unethical.
All you're simply doing is repeating that some things are wrong in different words.
How about this?
Right and wrong. Listen. No, I'm not going to listen. Don't overtalk me. Right and wrong is what is the nature of ethics. Okay. So when I say, why is anything wrong? You say, oh, well, because of ethics. You're not telling me anything. All you're just simply giving me is another word for right and wrong.
Okay. So let me say it again. My personal conclusion is that I believe the golden rule is an ethical way of looking at life. And that I believe that, one should treat others as he should treat himself. So that's basically my worldview.
Well, why should I accept that arbitrary, spontaneous thought in your head?
Well, obviously, number one, because I'm assuming you're not an asshole. I'm assuming you're a nice guy.
No, it has nothing to do with me. Why should anybody align our conduct because you have a spontaneous or arbitrary thought? Is your thought about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Why is that an imperative? By the way, when I say imperative, I mean ethical imperative. People ought to behave this way. Do you believe in evolution?
Yeah.
Okay, well, in evolution, it's a dog-eat-dog world, survival of the fittest. So are you happy that evolution brought you to this point?
Well, personally, yeah.
Okay, good. Then you've now contradicted yourself.
It is. I mean, evolution.
Because evolution is not do unto other organisms that you would have them do unto you. Evolution is survival of the fittest. It's a dog-eat-dog world.
Yep.
Okay?
There's a difference between wait a minute. It's a difference between
dude, you
ethics. No, there's a difference.
You don't know what you're talking about.
There is a difference between reality.
I want to ask you a question for my benefit, okay? So it'll help me make a decision of how I can understand and actually treat you, okay? Because depending on the way you answer will influence the way how I'm going to respond to you. And I don't mean being mean or anything like that. How old are you?
19.
Okay, thank you for answering. I appreciate that. Okay, go ahead. Because if you told me you were 29 or 39, I'd be a lot more harsh in my examination and response to you. But being that you're a teenager, okay, and you just left childhood a few years ago, okay, I know that you have a lot to learn. So go ahead.
I think evolution is a fact, and it shouldn't be confused with what.
Okay. Well, first of all, that's simply patently absurd. Okay, are all conclusions in science provisional?
Hmm.
Is there anything in science that's a fact?
Yes, the fact we exist, the fact that certain matter exists.
Hold on a second. Can you tell me what exists?
Matter.
And how do you know that's real and not an illusion?
Because everything is made up of matter.
How do you know
Matter
that?
is reality.
Okay. Have you examined all particulars in existence? Or did you just tell me what you believe? Have you examined all particulars to find out that they exist of matter?
I find these truths to be antimatter.
Yeah.
That too.
No, I'm just showing you the convoluted nature of your own reasoning. I'm not criticizing you. I'm actually helping you to show you that your own thinking is not coherent. Okay? You have been indoctrinated with certain ideas about life that you think are true. Okay? Like evolution or other ideas. Okay? So the question is, are they true? And if they're true, on what grounds do you know they're true? So, for example, you said you think that the highest value that should be guiding how we ought to behave, which is ethics, is that we should treat others and we should treat that we would have them treat us. But you told me you're a believer in evolution. But you are here today because of billions and millions of years of organisms not following the golden rule.
That's a shame. It's true, but it's also
Oh,
very
okay,
big shame.
okay. So evolution is evil then.
Effectively, yeah.
Okay, but you like something that's evil.
No, I think it exists regardless of whether I like it or not.
I didn't ask you that question.
Let me rephrase that.
And by the way, you've been brainwashed into evolution because you've never been taught the scientific evidences and philosophical objections. Okay, and you don't know what you don't know. Okay, you've been told that Charles Darwin discovered natural selection, right? He discovered it, right?
No, I do not believe he discovered. I believe he came up with one of them.
Oh, he
I
didn't
believe
discover.
he-
Oh, so in other words, he came up with a fantasy about how life came to be.
Could you let me finish?
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
believe he popularized the idea. That idea had been around for a very long time. But
No,
his
that's incorrect. What you're thinking of is the idea of evolution that was previously called transmutation had been around, even going back to the Greeks. But natural selection was not around. And in fact, Charles Darwin got the credit for it. Did you know that? Did you know Charles Darwin got the credit for natural selection?
a lot of people got credit for things they didn't invent back then.
That's right. And do you know where Charles Darwin got the idea of natural selection from?
The Galapagos Islands and the turtles.
No.
Didn't he rip it off
Yes.
from his uncle?
No. He stole the idea from Alfred Russel Wallace.
No, the story is.
Listen, Mr. 19-year-old. You do not know what the hell you're talking about. Charles Darwin ripped off the scientific hypothesis of natural selection from Alfred Russel Wallace. And then he pushed it off as his own finding. Why do you think that scientists or historians who are reluctant to do that have to concede that, quote unquote, Alfred Russel Wallace was the co-discoverer of natural selection? Do you know why they're conceding that? Because if they don't, they're going to have to admit that he ripped it off from Alfred Russel Wallace. Do you know why he ripped it off? It's because Alfred Russel Wallace wrote him an extended letter of his research and his hypotheses. And Charles Darwin said that he came up with natural selection before he even got the letter. But we now know that's a lie. The point I'm trying to tell you is what you've been taught about evolution, Charles Darwin, the Galapagos Islands, is simply half truths. Do you know that Darwin's finches don't in any way support the concept of universal common ancestry? Darwin's finches don't support that. All Darwin's finches show is that sometimes offspring that might have longer beaks rather than shorter beaks might be able to get the seeds in a drought, and they would tend to survive. But when the drought's over, and after we have several repeating generations of birds, the size of the beak go back to what it used to be. And beaks being longer, right, and having an advantage in a given environment is not macroevolution. It's just simply variation and reproduction of size, shape, coloration. Okay, it's not the arrival of new genetic information that would produce new complex anatomy and physiology. So Darwin's finches do not even support that. There's a really good book that you should read. It's called Icons of Evolution, and it exposes that. Okay?
Maybe.
Yeah. Evolution is now dogma throughout the world, but people think because it's dogma and people tell them, oh, it's a fact. We have overwhelming evidence. And people go, yup. We have overwhelming evidence. Watch this. What's the overwhelming evidence for evolution? Is it fossils? Because the fossils don't demonstrate universal common ancestry. And in fact, the fossilized remains that we have actually mitigates against universal common ancestry. Do you want to hear what one of the world's top paleontologists said about it, who was a rabid evolutionist? Okay. He said it's a trade secret of paleontologists, okay, that there are no transitional forms. Okay, what he's talking about, not that there aren't a handful of unique creatures like Archaeopteryx or Tiktaalik, weird-looking creatures, okay? The fossil record exemplifies stasis. Species appear abruptly and they disappear abruptly without leaving transitional forms. If evolution was true, we would at least expect to see that there are transitional forms. But we don't see that in the fossil record. You know what they do? They go, well, the reason why it's not there, it's just because of the rarity of fossils. And they're stymied as to why there aren't numerous transitional forms between the tips and nodes of these fully formed creatures. You know what they say? Oh, it's punctuated equilibrium. You see, evolution happens in such rapid bursts, it leaves behind no telltale fossilized remains. We'll say, well, you see, the reason why there's evolution is because we have these little tiny changes that happen over millions and billions of years. And, you know, even though it's really improbable, but if you throw a lot of Earth-like planets at it over 13.7 billion years, life is just going to pop up somewhere. Based upon what? Probability? Because if you're going to go by probability, you couldn't even form the coding sequences for less than a handful. You couldn't even do for less than a handful of coding sequences for proteins, even if you threw a trillion Earth-like planets at it. That's how mathematically remote the coding sequences are in DNA are. You say, well, if that's true, how can people still believe in evolution? Because it's atheism. It's without Godism. It's because if we start to realize, wait a minute, this idea that information could arise by a random process aided by natural selection, if it's not true, how'd we get here? I could give you a quote right now from an atheistic top scientist named Richard Lewontin who admits that. Okay? That's why evolution is dogma. It's because when Charles Darwin came along the scene, Charles Darwin was transitioning from a theist to an atheist in his adult life, and he decided that he no longer wanted to believe that the existence of the universe and our solar system and complex and beautiful life was the product of a designer. He didn't want to believe it. So he went on a search trying to find out how he could explain away complex biological life by purely materialistic and mechanistic means. You know what he said? He said, basically, in his letters, he said, if this theory succeeds, I will have succeeded at murdering God. You see, this is a little dirty little secret about Charles Darwin. He was peddling atheism in the form of biological science. We don't need a God. All we need are little tiny changes that will accumulate over millions or billions of years. And he thought that millions and billions of years was more than enough time. But did Charles Darwin know about DNA? No. What was his understanding of the cell? All his understanding of the cell was that it was a little globule. He had no idea how complex the molecular machinery of cells are. He had no inkling whatsoever of how complex the linear molecular coding sequences are in the DNA of microorganisms all the way to human beings, how complex that coding sequences are and how long they are. You know what? You might get away with cracking a password with a short number of letters in it. Try cracking a password that has hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of code. And it doesn't matter if you throw billions of years at it. Evolution is the biggest hoax ever foisted, next to Satan telling Adam and Eve they could eat of the fruit and they would become gods.
I respect your opinion. I still disagree with it, but I do not have the materials.
Good. Okay, good. Tell me, other than the fact that evolution is dogma throughout the world, right? And since you're a smart young man, right, and you surely wouldn't succumb to groupthink and the dogma of the masses, tell me why you believe in evolution.
Because I find its truth to be self-evident, Darwin or not.
Okay. That does not tell me anything. How is it that evolution is true?
Well, number one, it makes sense.
Okay. Explain to me. How does it make sense that complex information systems, known as DNA, can arrive by chance? Do you know what the odds? Okay. Proteins are composed of amino acids. Okay. It's like a chain. Now, when it comes to biological systems, we have the coding sequences for proteins, and we have other coding sequences that do not code for proteins that function and have regulatory functions, like embryological development, telling cells when to keep on dividing and splitting and so on and so forth. These are extremely long, right? Each individual nucleotide at a molecular level, right? 3 of them together to code for an amino acid for a protein is a 1 in 20 chance. A second one is 1 in 400. The third one is 1 in 8,000. 6 of them together is well over one chance in 10, 1 in 65,000. Okay. So when you make the coding sequences longer and longer and longer to code for complex anatomy and physiology, the improbability that chance can achieve this, even allowing for a step-by-step survival, right? It grows exponentially. Okay? So even if you threw a trillion Earths over 13.7 billion years, you still wouldn't have enough time and trials to create even several proteins. Do you know this mathematical fact, the probability, was so devastating that Anthony Flew, one of the world's most notorious philosophical experts of defending atheism, abandoned his atheism later in his life because he realized that on probabilistic grounds, evolution can't happen. You have to totally throw probabilistic reasoning out the window. Okay? But you see, all you're taught is, well, there's natural selection. And wow, look at all the similarities between these fossils. Similarity does not demonstrate or necessitate an ancestor-descendant relationship. Right? You say it makes sense. Okay, so does it make sense that you could create computer code by a random generation of binary numbers of ones and zeros? Does that make sense? If I listen, if I took a supercomputer at the NSA and I programmed the computer to generate ones and zeros, right? And to do it in trillions and trillions of separate threads and keep on generating it, right? Do you think it's ever going to produce even a small app or computer program? You would say no. And the reason why is because of the frequency of error, even wiping out the smallest of informational gains. And yet, that's what you believe happened with evolution. Okay? You've been fed a pseudoscientific dogma that matter and energy over long periods of time is your creator. That's what you've been taught. You've been taught, oh, well, you see, dinosaurs, they evolved into birds. Yeah, where'd you get that from? You go into a museum, I could bring you into a major museum right now. I could show you all the displays and I could explain to you how this is all speculation. Okay? For example, if you take a look at you see, people who are intimidated by science or are in awe of the major advancements of science say, well, this is science. These really, really, really smart people said all of these fossils have similar skeletons, and they put them in an arrangement showing that the small ones go to the big ones. Arranging the skeletons and similarities does not show that there's an ancestor-descendant relationship. Do you know how they claim to know that they evolved? It's called homology. You know what homology is? It's like, oh, well, look at the features of the bat wing and the human hand. Look at that. They're similar. Look at the similarity between iPhones from the first generation all the way up to the iPhone 11. Look at that. They share similar features. You see, you have been duped by a dogma that has swept the globe, and you've never asked any critical thinking skills about what I have been taught. Could it have really happened? And you're thinking, well, if what I'm saying is true, why would all these smart people believe it? Because they are human beings too. And they either want to believe that they are designed or they don't want to believe that they are designed. They either choose to believe that they are creatures made by a creator, or they want to be in a creator-free world. That's why people believe in evolution. Because the Galapagos Islands do not support a universal common ancestry. The fossil record does not support a universal common ancestry. Showing similarities in genetic code does not show necessarily common ancestry. I bet you were told that human beings and chimpanzees share 94% or so the same DNA. Did they ever tell you that? Do you have an answer? Well, the answer is it's a deception. It's because the only thing they've compared are the protein coding regions, which is less than 15% of the human genome. They didn't compare 75% or more of the human genome and chimpanzees. I feel sorry for people who have been duped by this because they really believe they're being given scientific information. Okay? I bet you were told that the appendix was an example of a vestigial organ. It's a holdover from evolution. Oh, your wisdom teeth. This is a sign of evolution. No, they're not. None whatsoever. Okay? The appendix is a part of the immune system. It's a reservoir of beneficial bacteria so that the gut, your intestines, can have a regular replenishing of beneficial bacteria. Why? Is so when pathogenic bacteria gets into your intestines, it is going to have to compete for real estate. And if your gut is filled, has a continuing resupply of beneficial bacteria, that is an environment that is detrimental to pathogenic bacteria. Well, why did they tell you that it was a sign of evolution? Because they go, oh, well, it's useless. It's just a holdover. Oh, you're coccyx? You see, that's a holdover. That's because we used to have tails.
Yeah, that's dumb.
No, your coccyx has ligaments and muscle attachments that aid you in sitting up and sitting down, and it also helps you to relieve your bowel movements. Okay? Now, do you know what? People who have had to have their coccyx surgically removed, do you know what they have problems in? They have problems sitting up and sitting down and moving their bowels.
Ouch. Wait, I didn't know they still brought up the they brought up the that the appendix is vestigial. They still do that?
Of course they do. Yes.
That's
And they
ridiculous.
how about the peppered moths?
No, yeah, that's been disproven a long time ago.
I mean, the peppered moths was a fraud, and yet it was in all the textbooks. Look, this is proof of evolution. It was a fraud. Moths do not hang on trees during daytime.
Yeah, it's pretty retarded.
The guy who claimed to discover this, he glued the moths to trees.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow, I did not know they still taught that the
Oh yeah, check out
appendix was vestigial.
check out the. I mean, I have it here. If you want, I'll give you a link to a Google Drive. Okay.
Mhm.
Go to the Google Drive and go to the Creation Evolution folder, and in there, you're going to find a ton of books that go over the lies, the scientific evidences for evolution. One of them is called Icons of Evolution. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey Duncan, how do you usually approach people when they ask you about Neanderthals?
Well, first of all, we have to distinguish that if we find some genetic sequencing that it is different than the DNA today, what you have to understand is every 5 or so years, they come out and they go, you know what we're finding? We have more Neanderthal DNA in us than we realized. Isn't this amazing?
Yeah, they're becoming more and more human.
By the way, that's not a joke.
Oh no, I know. I was going to ask you. So, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've researched into that a little bit. But isn't it that they only named it Neanderthal based on the mountain region it was found in, and the only reason
no. There's no doubt that the so-called DNA from bones that they say are Neanderthal, that there are some differences, but people don't have the ability to distinguish and demarcate the evolutionary speculation storytelling that has been imposed on quote Neanderthal than the actual facts. Okay.
Right. That's where I was going, because from what I read,
Okay.
the only reason that scientists leaned towards evolution was they were trying to say that it didn't fit the model archetype of Homo sapien.
Look.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, I'm going to speculate right now. What if it's, you see, whenever we talk about evolution or any of these categories, they always presuppose evolution, period. Okay.
Right.
So they're already starting with the position evolution is true. Okay. So whatever facts they're looking at is evidence of evolution. Okay. Now, imagine we have the biblical scenario, right? Now they won't consider, well, that's not science. So what? Because you're gonna start from a metaphysical position that's not science, regardless. Okay. Now,
Right.
imagine we have a world, okay, where humanity is rapidly populating the earth, and then it gets to the point where humanity is acting so badly and so evil that God decides, in order to protect future generations from not picking up the evil influences, he's going to give them all an early departure. Okay. He's going to give them an early ticket out of earth, and he floods the earth. Right. Then we have Noah and his children reproduce. Okay. Now, it might very well be that the DNA was different for the previous population, and for Noah and his descendants, modern DNA is reflective of the DNA of Noah and his children's descendants. But you see, we can't consider that because that's not science, because we all know evolution happened.
Right. Yeah. No,
There is so much storytelling and materialistic fantasy, and presented in scientific terminology and vocabulary, the average person cannot distinguish between what is actual fact. Hey, praise that I am. Was that you on YouTube last night?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, was that you on YouTube last night?
No, I wasn't on last night, I don't think.
Okay. Are you the praise that I am on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought I saw you on last night, and you were doing a critique about Dr. Josh.
Oh yeah. I thought you meant like in like a